Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020, or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. No matter how they come, a win is a win. It is a good evening to you, and how you be? William Haynes here, you there, here at 11:21 p.m. on this Monday evening. This Rays post-game edition of the William Haynes Show is live from the WHBC studio in Tallahassee, Florida. Number to call the show, 877-566-1020, with you maybe for about 30 minutes to an hour or so as we talk all things tonight's Rays win. It was 4-1 in the series opener over the Kansas City Royals. Going into this game, the Royals, in fact, were in first place in the American League Central. The Rays, with a couple of games to make up on the Boston Red Sox for first place in the American League East, improved to over 500 for the first time since the opening weekend when they were playing the Miami Marlins. So basically the first time, I believe, since April the 3rd, I believe, that they are above 500. So good for them. 9 wins and 8 losses. They dropped the Royals to 9 wins and 6 losses. The starter tonight for the Rays and getting the win was Josh Fleming. In his 5 1/3 innings of work, he gave up no runs and picks up his first win of the season, as he is now 1-1. Since being called up from the alternate training site. And then the starter for the Royals, Dan Duffy, played really well. 6 innings pitched, no earned runs, a couple of unearned. As really, as I led off the show with, it doesn't matter how they come, but a win is a win. The first 3 runs for the Rays were unearned. They came on errors, and the one that got it started was basically just an infield pop-up fly by Willy Adames that could not be tracked down by Carlos Santana. I guess a good thing that maybe the infield fly rule wasn't called. I'm not exactly. That's a rule that's kind of tricky, and I don't think a whole lot of people understand everything about it. But I mean, if that had been called, then he would have been out anyway. But it looked like there was no time during that play where Carlos Santana, the Royals' first baseman, was looking to be cleanly under that baseball and able to catch it. And so during that play, they had Joey Wendell at first and 2 outs, and Joey Wendell, being the hustle player that he is able to go from first all the way home, partly due to Carlos Santana's throw into second base to try and get Adames that trickled into the outfield. So really sloppy play defensively for the Kansas City Royals. That was just one of 3 errors on the night for them. And of course, the Rays, with the stellar pitching and the stellar defense, no errors for them, and they only give up 1 run over the course of the entire game. It was looking for a while there that it was going to be the 4th shutout already for the Rays. And then I guess you could say fan unfavorite, Chris Mazza comes into the game in a non-save situation in the 9th inning and gives up an earned run. It was a sacrifice fly to Jorge Soler. It was a one-out double for Perez, and they end up getting him in. A wild pitch in there as well. I know a lot of people not happy with Mazza. They had sent him down when Kiermaier came up, and they moved to the 5 outfielders, and then they had to go 13 position players, 13 pitchers. And then with the loss of Colin McHugh going on the 10-day IL with the back strain, they have to recall Chris Mazza basically just 24 hours after optioning him to the alternate training site. So Mazza obviously not at the top of the list as far as guys that are in high favor with the Rays brass, but there are times this season, it's going to be a long one over the next 5.5, 6 months or so, that you're just going to need innings at times, and those even come when you are leading in non-safe situations, of course, and Mazza got the job done, basically. I mean, all he had to do was just not give up 4 runs, and he did the job there. And an inning, a 2/3 from Ryan Thompson, and an inning, interesting inning from Hunter Strickland, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Of course, really, I think one of the main takeaways from tonight is Josh Fleming getting a little bit of a quick hook. Only, 65 pitches and 5 1/3, and kind of his homecoming. So that was certainly disappointing, and it looked for a little bit there at times that maybe that move was going to be going to backfire on Cash. He had, it seemed, a bullpen gaff a couple of days ago, putting Colin McHugh into a close game against the Yankees, and he gave up hits to the top of the order. And so, of course, we're in April, and we're already kind of seeing some interesting bullpen moves being made. And if you would like to potentially make a comment on that, this is certainly your place to do so. We have a line open if you'd like to call in. The number to call is 877-566-1020. Again, 877-566-1020. We're going to take a couple-minute break, allow maybe a call to roll in, and then we will return to tell you everything that you need to know about tonight's 4-1 win. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Rays postgame on the William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBCOfficial. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
HBC. And at 11:28, we are back on the William Haynes Show, continuing our discussion of tonight's Rays 4-1 win over the Kansas City Royals. Again, if you would like to call in, the number to do so is 877-566-1020. But now we continue with said discussion. So for the Rays, it was 4 runs on 7 hits, no errors for them. And then for the Royals, 1 run on 5 hits and a whopping 3 errors for them. As I mentioned earlier, the Rays improved to 9-8, the first time above 500 since the opening weekend of the season, and they drop the first place team in the AL Central, Royals, to 9-6 as they take the first game of the season. There will be 2 more games played between these 2 teams, both at 8:10 tomorrow night and the following. And we'll talk about those matchups at the end of the show. It looks like right now it will be potentially Rich Hill going up against Brad Keller. So I guess another, to say the least, intriguing pitching matchup, as it seems like things have lined up pretty well for the Royals. And it definitely did tonight with Danny Duffy doing his thing out there. And so hopefully the Rays will be able to at least win the series, if not maybe get another sweep and potentially go on a winning streak. Right now, the Rays have won 4 in a row. Getting the win, it was Josh Fleming, his first of the season, 5 1/3 of no runs. The loss, Danny Duffy, 6 innings pitched, no earned runs, but of course the unearned because of all the errors that took place. So definitely not Danny Duffy's fault, and he was pitching really well. If not for the errors, he might have gone 7 or 8 scoreless potentially. And then with the 4-1 final, there was no save situation to be found, so there was no Rays reliever collecting the save tonight. So the lineup card that Kevin Cash submitted, we'll discuss the defensive alignment first in the outfield from left to right. It was Randy Arozarena in left, Kevin Kiermaier in center, Manuel Margot in right, and then in the infield from third to first, Joey Wendell at third, Willie Adames at shortstop, Brandon Lau at second base, and Mike Brasso at first base. So taking a look at this lineup, just first glance, Kevin Cash continues to, I suppose, shake things up. Willie Adames and Randy Arozarena got the day off yesterday. They've both been struggling with strikeouts and, I guess, timing up the fastballs. So, and Arozarena had, it seemed like, some hand issues exiting spring training and even going into the start of the regular season. So, of course, in this 30 games and 31-day stretch that the Rays are in, although they will get the off day Thursday, that is a much-needed off day. You have to be careful to manage all of your players. So it was Arozarena and Adames back in the lineup tonight, and Adames had a pretty good game, and it looks like Arozarena's only hit probably should have been an out, but he just got lucky with where the ground ball was. So, he was 1 for 4 in the box score. I kind of see that for an analyst purpose, kind of more of an 0 for 5. But obviously he will continue to bat at the top of the order. I imagine they would try and give Yandy Diaz a day off today because he's been playing a ton of games in a row at first base, and you've got to be careful, with everyone, but I think especially him, maybe just get him off his feet every once and again. And they gave him the half day off, essentially, giving him the DH, and he let off again, which I think is something that they're going to lean into. I know Meadows was not in the lineup, probably because of righty-lefty, but I think even if Meadows was playing tonight, he would not have been the leadoff guy. It seems like they are really running in that direction with having Diaz do that, and he goes 0 for 4 with a walk. So it does give you a little bit of production, and strikeout numbers a little higher than we've seen from him, too, in his 4 at-bats, and it seemed like he was having a rough time reading, I guess, Danny Duffy out of the hand, so hopefully you chalk that up to a poor night. And then outside of that, maybe one more thing, Mike Brasso continues to, I think this is maybe his 3rd consecutive start as they are trying to get him in the lineup and see if he can contribute. Another 0 for him. He goes 0 for 3 tonight with a walk and a strikeout, and it was not a great game for him yesterday either as he went 0 for 4. So it looks like after that really hot start in that series finale against Texas that he's maybe cooled off a little bit, but they may still give him those opportunities. There's a lot to be done, I guess, with the infield until Ji-Man Choi comes back somewhere around mid to late May. So, the infield, it's a logjam anyway, but it's going to be a lot worse in about a month. I say that being worse, that's not necessarily a bad problem to have. A lot of good players and not enough spots for all of them, but it's easier to get all kinds of guys more playing time right now because you have fewer of them. So I don't know if Brasso will start. Tomorrow is against a righty, Brad Keller, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of the lineup. That might be a good spot to get Tsutsugo at first, maybe, and then you DH Yandy, or vice versa. Yandy plays first, and then maybe you DH Setsugo. But we'll have to wait and see on that. But outside of that, pretty traditional lineup. Kiermaier in center field and all the regulars. Mejia was in the game at catcher. It seems like now they are not going to give Zunino that righty on lefty advantage. The reason being is, even though Mejia is a switch hitter, it seems like they like him a lot more from the right side of the plate, especially against left-handed pitching. That was their reasoning for having him in the lineup Saturday against Jordan Montgomery. So that may be a trend that continues, and maybe there may be less back-to-backs for the two catchers. I'm not sure. I'd imagine maybe Zunino will still start maybe 4 games a week, and Mejia the other 2 or 3, depending on obviously where the off days lie, and somewhere in between there. And then the way that the lineup was ordered was Yandy Diaz leading off, as I said, Arozarena batting second, Brandon Lau third, Manuel Margot cleaning up, followed by Brasso and Mejia, and a 7-8-9 of Joey Wendell, Willy Adames, and Kevin Kiermaier. So another kind of interesting lineup. It seems like maybe, I know that not all the regulars were in there tonight, but it seems like Cash is finding something a little more consistent. Brandon Lau, at least while he is in this slump, is not going to be hitting cleanup, which I understand makes sense because traditionally speaking, the number 4 hitter tends to come up in spots with men on base more often than not. And with Lau's performance, 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts, and his average that continues to plummet all the way down right now to 161. You don't want him coming up in a lot of those big situations, but he is still one of your better hitters. So you with the cachet, so you do still need to have him at the top of the order. And so I think the 3 spot, especially on nights where Austin Meadows is not playing, is a good spot for Lau. I can't imagine that he would be anywhere towards the bottom of the order just yet. Maybe in the 5 spot, but probably no lower than that. Manuel Margot is one of those guys that has hit cleanup, it seems like, quite a bit for the Rays, and might be going in that direction right now because Yandy, I think, was the cleanup hitter primarily before, but with him now going into that leadoff spot, obviously someone is going to have to take his place at the 4 hole, and so right now that's looking to be Margot. Sometimes it's Wendell. You could even go, I guess, Brasso. They've done that, I think, at least once already this season, so that's going to be kind of a mix and match spot. And then the bottom of the order was interesting, and this has been something we've been discussing the last few days, is that the Rays have been getting a lot of value out of the middle and even towards the bottom part of their order, and I think part of the reason why is just because they're putting some of their better hitters down there, but also, of course, the guys that have been struggling have been heating up a little bit as well. Mejia batting in the 6th spot is interesting because I think overall, you look at the players that aren't everyday players, so I guess Setsugo, Mejia, Brasso, all those guys that aren't in the lineup each and every day. Mejia is probably at the top of that list as far as production that they've been able to get out of him, and he was 1 for 4 tonight. Joey Wendell, who I would make this argument that Joey Wendell has been the best offensive performer for the Rays so far this season. We are now 17 games in. I really don't think it's much up for discussion. He's leading the team in batting average. He's tied for the team lead in home runs. He's has the team lead in runs batted in. And might have the team lead in extra base hits as well, I'm not sure, but is leading in almost every offensive category. He's batting .340, getting on base about 37% of the time, so a lot of production from him, and you put him in that 7 spot to maybe get some juice out of that part of your order, and he comes through again today, getting on base 2 times in 4 plate appearances, so that's good to see. And then at the bottom of the order, they were getting some unexpected hits as well, with Willy Adames and Kevin Kiermaier, the 8 and 9 hitters, both going 2 for 4. And Kevin Kiermaier, in fact, and what a hot start he's been off to. I know it's only 2 games since coming off the injured list, but he was 2 for 4 with 2 RBI singles. So not just getting the hits, but getting them in big situations. He was 2 for 3 with runners in scoring position tonight. And the other time, the 2 hits, the time that he didn't get a hit with runners in scoring position, he did get on base via the error that did score a run. So at least putting the ball in play, because to start the season, before going on the injured list, Kiermaier was 1 for 11 and was atrocious, especially in big situations, way too many strikeouts, things of that manner. So Kiermaier in the 9 spot, which is a spot that I love him in. He was able to produce quite a bit. The lineup as a whole, they went 2 for 9 with runners in scoring position, but keep in mind, obviously, that guys reaching base via the error is not counted as a hit, or especially in that situation. So at least they were putting the ball in play. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And then they left a total of 8 runners on base. In comparison, the Kansas City Royals went just 0 for 3 with runners in scoring position and left just a total of 4 men on base. The Kansas City, by the way, they only had runners in scoring position at 2 situations in the game. Once in the first inning with a 1-out Carlos Santana double. He moves over to third base, and then they didn't get anyone to second or third until the 9th inning with another 1-out double, that time by Salvador Perez. So not just Josh Fleming, but all the Rays pitching, I guess maybe save for Chris Mazza, had done a particularly good job at holding down a Royals lineup that going into the season, and it's been bearing out, that I thought had a lot of potential and would be very good. I mean, I don't need to go down the list, because obviously if you're watching or listening to the game tonight, that was a point of discussion. But this is not the Royals team maybe of for the last few years or so that are kind of a seller team in the AL Central. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily going to stay this way, but a team that is leading the division currently. They have a 1-game lead over Cleveland as it stands right now, with slow starts, of course, for the White Sox and the Twins. But by no means is this an easy lineup to face, and that Rays pitching was able to dominate them in the way that they did, I think, is a good sign. I can't really say it enough. This is the trademark of this team. Pitching and defense is how they are going to win games. They're not going to win games 9-8. That may never happen. Who knows? That's not how they're built to win. And so on nights like this, the 4 runs really at times, I mean, if the Royals had been clean defensively, it might have only been a run or 2 for the Rays. And so not giving up a run at least until the 9th inning in a non-save situation, so you had Maz out there. I mean, if this was 3-0 or 2-0, they probably would have had Castillo, and I would imagine he would finish the shutout. So I suppose look at it that way, just in regard to expressing the Rays' dominance that is being put out there right now. Of course, with the sweep in the Bronx of the American League worst New York Yankees, and taking the first of a 3-game set against another division leader in the Kansas City Royals. So now let's go down 1 through 9 for all the Rays hitters and talk about their performances tonight. Leading off, and the DH, it was Yandy Diaz. Tonight, Yandy goes 0 for 4 with a walk and 2 strikeouts. His average is down to 264. That's continuing to drop, but is still getting on base really quite a bit, with an on-base percentage right now of exactly 400. So getting on base, 40% of the time, which right now, everyone that was in lineup tonight, that was the best on-base percentage of anyone. So it makes sense to continue to have him in the leadoff spot and let guys like Arozarena and Meadows and Lau maybe drive him in if at all possible. He struck out to open the game, just to look at the leadoff at bat, because I think that's such an important thing to look at. Struck out swinging a pretty ugly at bat, as I mentioned earlier. Yandy Diaz, not a guy that strikes out an awful lot. That's kind of one of the better traits about him as a player, is that more often than not he's putting the ball in play. Maybe not hard contact, but at least he's getting the ball out there. That's better than a strikeout, especially when you've got men on base. But Danny Duffy made him look not like that. I mean, he chased the slider down and in, was chasing fastballs, maybe where he would take it. And this was another thing, and this has been an unfortunate trend the last maybe, at least this point, we're talking 4 or 5 games in a row, that the home plate umpire has just not been fantastic. I mean, You look at the umpire scorecards on Twitter and the guys that put that out. I mean, continually the calls that are being made behind the plate are in favor to the tune of at least half a run or maybe even a full run in favor of the opposing team. So that's something that the Rays have had to work to overcome, which is never an easy thing. And I thought the guy calling the balls and strikes, Roberto Ortiz, was iffy at best. There was not a whole lot, usually if you're gonna call stuff outside the zone, strikes, or vice versa, it's good at least if there's a pattern to it, so you can recognize and take that into your at bat. But there was times tonight where you things had no reason. There was no correlation to any decisions being made behind the plate. So that was kind of a frustrating thing, and I think that led in part to some of the strikeouts for the Rays tonight. They struck out as a team a total of 12 times. They walked only 4 times, which is not a fantastic ratio, but I mean, anytime you walk 4 times is not terrible. But Diaz made to look silly a little bit in his first at-bat. He came around and I think hit a pretty good fly out to center field for the third out and a 1-2-3 in the third. He struck out to lead off the fifth. That was also against Danny Duffy and to end the inning rather. And that was actually the situation. The Rays had just put up 2 runs, and so they had a man at first base and 2 outs. And kind of a similar at bat. He took a slider on the outside part of the plate, and that was a big part of what Danny Duffy was doing. He would put the sliders on the outside part to righties, and then maybe even go front door occasionally, but mainly was going back door with the sliders to right-handers. And I mean, that was the scouting report on him going into the games, and he was getting a lot of called strikes on that. Fastball in, fouled away, and then at 1-2. Got him to chase a fastball that was very high in the zone, if at all. So Diaz was going chasing tonight, and it didn't exactly work out. He popped out to the first baseman for the first out in the 7th, and then he worked a walk in the 9th with, it looks like, at least a man on. A man on first, and Kiermaier, in fact. So you walk to get Kiermaier in scoring position, albeit, I mean, it was a 4-0 game, but a good situation. And that was former Ray, in fact, Wade Davis. He just did not pitch a very good 9th inning. So it was a pretty easy walk and some easy takes for Yandy. So it's not like the batting eye is going away for Yandy, but it's always good to have that reassurance of at least there was one at bat that he worked pretty nicely over the course of the game. As a total, Royals pitching through 162 pitches, 96 were for strikes, which of course also includes foul balls, which there was a lot of. And this is surprising to me. Danny Duffy faced 24 men, only threw a first pitch strike to 7 of the 24. So the Rays, more often than not, were starting off in counts 1-0, and he was still able to pick up 8 strikeouts over 6 innings, and one of those was actually good for number 1,000 in his career. So a milestone for Danny Duffy did take place during tonight's game against the Rays. But back to Diaz, just kind of an off night. I think they would have, I understand righty-lefty and all that. I think they would have been just better off having him add to the lineup. But that was part of the discussion last night going into the game, was who was going to play, because Meadows was not. It appeared there was no need to have Setsugo in there. You just got his confidence up. Don't put him lefty on lefty against one of the tougher left-handed starters, at least I guess in the American League, I would say. So I think it was a matter of, well, somebody's got to play. They could have maybe had Zunino catch and have Mejia DH or something like that, but they put Yandy in the lineup. The off day Thursday may be the case, but I think Yandy could use an off day here upcoming pretty shortly. Speaking of a guy that he might need an off day, but just got one yesterday, Randy Arozarena in left. Today he was 1 for 4, no walks with 2 strikeouts, and as I said, his hit was kind of a cheapie, I would say. Just trickled through the infield, and I believe got lucky with where it was placed. His average right now is it's up to 246, I guess, with them going 1 for 4 tonight. So 246 batting average, 313 on base percentage, and the slugging is not much better at 377. So it's not like he's hitting a lot of doubles and home runs. He's got 2 on the season, but those came on back-to-back days against I guess what at this point we can call pretty poor Yankees pitching. So Arozarena is off to a little bit of a sluggish start. Dave Wills has continually said on the radio side, calling the Rays games, that he just looks jumpy at the plate right now. I don't think we ever considered Arozarena to be a guy that would take a patient at bat. He likes to get his pitch, which is the fastball, and he'll jump over it, all over it. But starting this season, he's got a lot more off-speed stuff, and he's been taking more than he should. And there was a couple of times tonight where he took pitches in the zone for strikes and then chased stuff out of the zone later in the at-bat for strike 3, which is obviously that's something like a Willie Adames. Willie Adames is kind of the opposite. He chases early and then takes strikes late. But that, just to give you an idea, that's kind of the situation that we're talking about. It's not like the sky is falling, but Arozarena, the only reason why the Rays were able to get as far as they did in October last year. So it's a little alarming, I would say, that he's struggling as much as he is at the plate right now. But I think is a pretty good, maybe slightly above average outfielder, and he played a decent game and left. And for what it's worth, Phillips came in the bottom of the 8th as a defensive replacement, which makes sense because they had the 3-0 lead at that time. And so Phillips went into left, which I guess with Kiermaier now, the everyday center fielder, that Phillips is going to be playing a lot more of the corners, which was something I was not even really aware that he was able to do. I mean, I guess any center fielder could play the corners, but I wasn't sure how comfortable he would be with doing it. But it looks like he's their go-to late-game defensive replacement. And because of guys reaching base in the 9th, he did get an at-bat, did Phillips, and he struck out swinging against Wade Davis, righty on lefty. It was a pretty poor at-bat, and by the way, Phillips' average is down to 100. He's not been working a ton of great at-bats. Kind of like Arozarena, he's just swing at everything, but I think Arozarena has a little bit more success with it. So let's talk about a little bit more about Arozarena. He grounded out to shortstop in the first inning. Did work an 8-pitch at bat against Danny Duffy, and there was some not so good calls being made early in that bat. He did take a sinker away for strike 1. I mean, I guess we'll just call it a fastball because the rest of the ones in the at bat were. Then took a changeup that was probably outside for strike 2. So he takes 2 pitches and he's already down 0-2. Then he takes some pitches that are well either inside or outside and fouls some off. Gets himself into a full count. And then on a changeup, just rolls over on it and grounds out. So I guess a good, more patient at bat there, especially to be taking those pitches that he did. With 2 strikes, that's a good sign. But later in the game, had some frustrating at bats. He struck out to start the 4th, also against Duffy, of course. Another full count as well. He started off 3-1, then fouled off a sinker, so he got his pitch kind of, but just didn't square it up. And then in a full count, he swung through a pitch that probably would have been ball 4 up and in. That was something that Cash has been talking about, the Rays manager, Kevin Cash, that pitch up and in to righties is probably called a strike about 10 or 20% of the time just because the umpire doesn't really see it, and mainly guys swing at it, so it's not like he even has to call it anyway. So I guess he's very swing happy on fastballs right now and has been struggling to square them up as well, which is something that we've been dealing with a lot this year. In the 6th, he did hit a leadoff single. Like I said, I mean, I don't want to bash the guy, but I think did get kind of lucky. I don't want to take it away from him either. Celebrate the success that these guys are having. But looking at the at bats, it was a pretty quick one in a 1-1 count. And one where he chased a curveball, but then on the 1-1, got his fastball kind of high and away, so they were pitching Arozarena away. At least Danny Duffy was, and he was able to put it in play, and it was an infield single to the shortstop, a play that Nicky Lopez probably should have made, but did not. I think that was maybe the one that just found just the right spot, but he was also called out. It wasn't his fault, but they had bases loaded, and it was a force out at home on a double play ball by Mejia, a 1-2-3 double play, which you don't see very often. Probably the first one this year. It's got to be. In the 7th inning with a couple of men on, that was a pretty big spot for him, albeit, it was in a 3-0 game. He came up with runners at the corners and just 1 out and started off 2-0. That was right after Tyler Zuber came in. So started off 2-0, then took the fastball high and in for a strike. So then it's, just as I mentioned, you get killed if you do, killed if you don't. So that sucks for him. Then took another fastball. This one kind of middle low in the zone at the knees. So took that one for a strike as well, strike 2. And then on a 2-2 count, chased the slider down and away. So did take a pitch that he was supposed to take that should have been probably ball 3 maybe. And then ends up chasing a bad pitch with 2 strikes with a runner at third and less than 2 outs. And obviously not super consequential with it being in the 7th and they were up 3-0, but you do want to see your number 2 hitter and one of your cornerstones in your lineup maybe come through in that situation, and then struck out in the 9th with a couple of men on. So that situation that it was... did he pitch? Or no, I'm sorry, that was Brett Phillips that struck out in the 9th inning. And for Phillips, it was runners at first and second, and did work a 6-pitch at bat, but just swung through a 90-mile-an-hour fastball in the middle of the plate. So a poor at bat for Phillips there. But more to the discussion of Arozarena, just nothing to be said that we haven't already said. Just that, if he gets his pitch, he's got to be able to square it up, which is not happening a whole ton right now. And just work a little bit better counts. Maybe take some from Yandy Diaz and take a couple more pitches here and there. But we'll see how that continues to go, and if that pattern progresses into the next couple of days. I'd imagine he'll probably play the rest of the games in this series. Batting at the 3 spot, it is Brandon Lau. Lau tonight was 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts. His average is down to 161, a non-base of 288, and if you're interested, a slugging of 268. So he's only got 1 home run on the season, and I believe maybe 2 doubles. So most of his hits, when they are coming, are singles, but he's in a real rough patch right now. I just want to take a peek. He went 0 for 4 yesterday. Got the off day the day before, and then the day before that, he got on base 3 times. So he is right now in an 0 for 9 stretch, so not necessarily a slump just quite yet. I think even like an 0 for 10 or 0 for 11 stretch, because he made outs the last couple of at-bats that game I was discussing. So getting there towards a slump, and Brandon Lau, a player that is at least shown so far that he is prone to the slump, something unfortunately that took place during October of last year, and he's just not really been able to find any kind of footing to date this season. Did come up, it looks like he came up with runners in scoring position twice and ended up going 0 for 2. He struck out looking in the first, got kind of burned there because I think he took some... that was a rough at-bat for him in the first inning against Danny Duffy. Swung at the fastball high and away for strike 1, then took kind of that same pitch, but in the zone, so strike 2, and then he got a fastball at 95, kind of middle, pitches that Lau should be kind of obliterating, and then he took it. With on an 0-2 count, he took a fastball right down the pipe. So a guy that's had trouble chasing off speed out of the zone, and that had to be what he was anticipating. But I guess Danny Duffy just decided to challenge him there, and Lau just took it harmlessly and with the bat on the shoulder. And so it's not an apt comparison, but it reminds me of that was a problem that Tommy Pham had as a Ray. He would go up to the plate and he would strike out in 3 pitches looking and not take the bat off the shoulder a single time. And to the point I'm trying to make is just that baseball's hard enough as it is. When you get your pitch, you got to swing at it. And so it was obvious that he was expecting something else. And I guess more times than not, he would have been right, because obviously on 0-2, do what Blake Snell does and just spike the curveball in the dirt, because why not? But Duffy just decided to go right at him for his first out of the game. Struck out in a 1-2-3, in fact, where Duffy struck out the side. Popped up with a man on first. Flew out in a situation in the 7th where there was a couple of men on base. It appeared he came up right after a Rosarena, so it was men at the corners and 2 outs. And he did get a fastball. This one was kind of down and in, and he flew out on it to center field, and then struck out in the 9th inning. Another situation with runners in scoring position, this time with runners at first and second, and also 2 outs, and does work a full count, a 7-pitch at bat, and ultimately he starts off 0-2, then works it full with some good takes, or really rather easy takes, and then swings and misses on a fastball up and in at 91 from Wade Davis. So a disappointing night at the plate for Brandon Lau there. And he'll get a righty and lefty, I guess, tomorrow. He's not a big splits guy, not that it matters anyway, but any kind of advantage that you can give him right now, I guess, would be a positive thing. Manuel Margot in the cleanup spot tonight. He was 0 for 3 with a walk and 2 strikeouts. His average right now is down to 245. It seems he's gone in a bit of a slump. I mean, he had a home run a couple of days ago, so maybe not entirely, but I think it's cool off since his pretty hot start to begin the year. And on base right now, 309. Talk about slugging. I mean, his slugging right now is over 200 points higher than his batting average, which is 449. So I guess when he is connecting with the baseball, he's at least getting to second base and potentially rounding the bases. So that's something definitely to keep in mind, especially if he's going to be a cleanup hitter. You want a high slugging percentage. So he struck out to start the 2nd, then struck out again in the 4th where Duffy struck out the side, then did work his walk in the 6th with a man on first and 1 out, so good to see him make his base there, and then it flew out to center to lead off the 8th. So not very consequential at bats. It did, the one time I guess he was coming up with men on base, he did walk, so that's good, I suppose, and that's really all I can say. Did make some good plays in right field that needed to be made, so good on him for that. Batting in the 5 spot was Mike Brasso, 0 for 3, a walk and a strikeout. Is batting 229 right now and has cooled off since that really hot start that last game against Texas, as I said. In his first at bat in the 2nd, a bit unlucky to say the least. It was just a line out to the shortstop, so he did put a pretty good swing on it, and it was a slider kind of down and away, so good on Brasso for being able to go down and dig that pitch. Typically, that's something that we are, moaning and complaining about righties chasing that pitch, but that he was able to put such good contact on it, that was a good thing. But just couldn't find the open space that like maybe a Rosarena did in his one hit of the game. After that, he flew out to right to start the 5th. He walked in the 6th inning with a couple of men on. It was first and second, so he walked to load the bases, so that was a pretty good at-bat, and then he struck out looking in the 8th, and that was his night. So I guess similarly to Margot, that the one time he did come up in a big situation, he was able to reach base, so that's good at least. Silver linings, of course, and they're much easier to find when the team wins, by the way, let me say that much. Batting in the 6th spot is the catcher, Francisco Mejia. And by the way, let me just say, Brasso, pretty good at first base. One of the first times we've seen him start there. So obviously a place he can play. He showed that last year, and that will be one way for him to get playing time because Yandy can't play at first base every day. That's just, I think, too much wear and tear on a bigger guy like that. And until G-Man Choi comes back. So not a bad game at all for Brasso. But now discussing Mejia, he goes 1 for 4, no walks, a strikeout, and his average right now 321, an on base of 355, and a slugging of 500. So he's been really good with the singles and the sac bunts and situational baseball, but getting his first home run as a Ray a couple of days ago and mixing some doubles in there as well. So when Mejia does get the chance to play, more times than not, he is coming through in a successful way. So in the 2nd inning, he got the first hit of the night for the Rays, a 2-out single to get a base runner going. Then in the 5th inning, struck out with nobody on and 1 out. And then in the 6th inning, he did hit into that 1-2-3 double play with the bases loaded, and it was with 1 out. So it did end the inning. Props to him for putting the ball in play. I think he does have a career grand slam to his name that came a couple of years ago in 2018. But here in this at-bat, it was against Danny Duffy as he was trying to work out of the jam and keep it a 2-0 game. Mejia from the right side of the plate takes the slider down and in for ball 1. Then swings at the slider, I guess kind of down and away. So that must have been that like backdoor slider. He does swing at it for strike 1, then swings at the curveball kind of down and in. So Duffy was like mixing some incredible pitches in that at bat. So he's down 1-2, and then gets that backdoor slider again that he swung through, and that time was just a very slow, light chopper that was kind of right to the pitcher, where he had to take a few steps in from the mound, and so the throw to home to get the force of Rosarena was an easy play, and then they still had time to go to first in order to get Mejia there for the double play. So just unfortunate circumstance. I guess the only other thing is he would have just swung and missed strike 3, and so it would have been bases loaded with 2 outs for Joey Wendell. But I mean, I would no matter what the situation, you always want to see the guy put it in play rather than strike out. I know with the homer ball that's being played in the sport right now, that might not be conventional wisdom, but at least for the Rays, I would say that should be the goal, is always to put it in play. And then it popped out to the catcher in a 1-2-3 in the 8th. That was kind of an interesting play. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but he kind of he was definitely in Salvador Perez's way there as Perez was trying to get to the baseball. So that was kind of a funny moment. Catcher on catcher crime, if you will. Who knows? It could have been accidental, but you never know. What's up their sleeve with the Rays? Always trying to get that slight advantage if they can. Batting in the 7th spot, it was Joey Wendell, and I apologize. Let me just say this about Mejia, and another pretty good game from him at catcher. He's caught a couple different guys. Let's see, did he catch Fleming the last time? We'll check real quick on that. Fleming's first start of the year against Texas. No, it was Zunino. So this is the first time that Mejia has caught Fleming, which I think is interesting because Fleming, or rather Mejia has caught Glasnow now a couple times, and it seems like Cash is trying to get Mejia comfortable with all members of this rotation potentially, which may lead you to believe that he is trying to overtake Zunino for the starting catcher job, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. As I said before, in the 7th spot, Joey Wendell, another good night at third base for him. 1 for 3 with 2 runs scored, a walk, no strikeouts. A team-leading batting average of 340, an on-base of 375, and a whopping slugging, boy oh boy, of 585 right now. So he not only is making the hits count, but is often getting them for extra bases. Was not the case tonight, but has been electric at the plate. He did an interview with Neil Solondz on This Week in Rays Baseball on Sunday, and he was discussing something that kind of surprised me that I guess, watching the games was pretty easy to notice early on, was that Wendell in the offseason wanted to work on launch angle, kind of getting the ball out there in the air a little more. He wants to hit more doubles, potentially more home runs, because if you've watched Wendell since coming over to the team in 2018, he's been mainly a singles guy. I mean, is due for maybe 5 to 10 home runs a season, and I guess now could be looking at potentially doubling those totals with at least the pace he's on right now. He's tied for the team lead in long balls with 3 through 17 games played. So an impressive start for him, and it's not just with the homers. I mean, very clutch singles as well. Again, there's no doubt that he is the best offensive player right now going for the Rays, and he is leading the team with runs batted in as well with, I think, 11. So a very nice start for Wendell. And when you put that guy in the 7th spot, it allows for some interesting situations because obviously the top of the order should be pulling their own weight, which they didn't necessarily do tonight, but most nights maybe they will. And then maybe he comes on or comes up with men on base towards the bottom of the order and can get those hits like he did tonight. So I like the thought process behind that. He came up in the second inning with a man on first and 2 outs and flew out to left. In the fifth inning, 2 outs, bases empty, did hit a single, and he ultimately came across for the first run scored of the night. And I know I already said it already, but if we had listeners that didn't maybe tune in until a bit later in the program, and if you are listening, again, number to call 877-566-1020 if you'd like to talk Rays. But the point that I wanted to make again about Joey Wendle is with 2 outs and him at first base, a routine infield pop-up from Adames, and Joey Wendle, known for being the hustle player that he is. Obviously, with 2 outs, you're supposed to run on contact, but most guys, I would say probably about any other guy in that lineup, I mean, I don't know for sure, but that's just guessing, they would run, kind of, but they on that play, they might have gotten to third base, or some might have, only even been safe at second, who knows. But Wendle, he was booking it like he always does, and so it's not going to happen very often. It may just happen once a year, who knows. But the first baseman for Kansas City, Carlos Santana, was not able to make the catch, and so due to Wendle's hustle play, he's able to get all the way home, first to home on a pop-up, which is like unheard of. So just props to Joey. It doesn't take an athlete to do that. That's just a decision that you make. You don't have to be fast to do it, but you just have to run hard, and that's what Wendle did. So I love the guy for that. I can't say it enough. I mean, he has been my favorite player since he came over in 2018, and he's been a mainstay since then. And I love the guy. I love that he hustles. He runs out every ground ball. He runs it out all the way, and has blossomed, I think, into a very versatile defensive utility player. No one, maybe besides anyone in the Wendle family, is as happy to see him off to this hot start as I am. I think it's a fantastic thing. So his hustle play paid off there. Then did work a leadoff walk in the 7th, and ended up coming across a score on another error and kind of another hustle play. So a good night for Wendle all around, I'd say, and then flew out to right in the 9th inning to start the inning. And I think as well in his at-bats did have a couple of, I think a few guys in the lineup had this, but some hard-hit foul balls that were almost in play. Like Rosarena had a foul ball that was like inches away from being a double, it looked like. So he is charging some baseballs, but I guess the luck factor is not coming through. But with Wendle, another fantastic night at the plate and defensively as well for him. And then talk about guys that are defensive mainstays, but have performed, I guess they performed well tonight offensively. We'll start with Adames first. At the 8th spot, the shortstop was 2 for 4 with 2 runs scored, no walks, no strikeouts. His average is up above the Mendoza line at 204, an on-base of 232, and a slugging of 370. And so he was coming up tonight. I would say probably his main play, maybe. I mean, it was for the first run of the game, was that pop-up again that he reached base thanks to Carlos Santana. And then he ended up coming across the score as well because he got all the way to second on that play, and then Kiermaier knocked him in with an RBI single. But then after that, he came up with a man on first and no outs in the 7th and hit a single. And I think Wendle ended up getting all the way home there because of an error. Yeah, that could have been potentially a double play ball, actually. But the second baseman, Whit Merrifield, just missed it with the glove, and it rolls all the way slowly into center field. And so Wendle, again, who was hustling, was able to get all the way home, first to home on that play. So not identical, but very similar situations. And Adames, rather, got all the way to third on that play, even though it was a single. So very interesting for the bottom of the order there, no doubt. Then in the 9th inning, with with 1 out and no man on in the 9th, he did hit a single, and he did end up coming across to score once again for the 4th and final out that the Rays would score tonight. So he stole a base, and on that play, the throw from catcher Salvador Perez was offline, and so he's able to get up and run all the way to third, and then another RBI single for Kevin Kiermaier was able to bring him in, and so that happened a couple times Kiermaier driving in Adames from scoring position. So Adames getting the day off yesterday along with Arozarena didn't seem to pay off, at least right now, for Randy, but certainly looks to have done so for Willy Adames. Looking at his at-bats, yes, he was coming through. I think some of those things that we don't like when we watch him at the plate are still there. I'll give credit, because Steve Carney pointed this out, and I didn't really look at it this way. I was listening to his weekly edition of Under the Orange Roof, which is a terrific weekly podcast he releases every Monday with some great information and good interviews. But he was saying that Adames, he swings like he's trying to uppercut the baseball every time. And so because of that, he's swinging under pitches and swinging through them as a result. I just kind of viewed that as he just wasn't squaring it up. But that might be intentional. Maybe he's not just trying to square it up and hit singles. I mean, you can tell he's putting a lot of home run swings out there, and he's got one on the season so far that thankfully did not spoil that Tyler Glasnow gem against Texas, because that would have been just an outright disaster. But that style is still going for Adames. That's not something that's going to change. That's just, I guess, as an artiste would say, a stylistic decision that's made by Willy Adames. So, but was able to come through with the base hits, the singles, and put the ball in play, which should have been a pop out, but did allow for a run to score. So good on Adames for his performance tonight. And I've really been kind of understating this, I suppose. The Rays' defense tonight was terrific, but mainly in thanks to what Willy Adames was able to do between second and third, or I guess most of the time. I mean, they have him all over the place, but you get the idea at the shortstop position. And Andy Fried was saying this on the radio call, that he is just he's blossomed as a shortstop. Early in his race career, had trouble making routine plays. The splash plays was already there, but he's cleaned up his game. He makes the routine plays, and he makes them look routine. Gets the ball out of his hand very quick, so if the throw is off, maybe gives the first baseman time to adjust and things like that. So is not taking his time, is not rushing the throws per se, but is getting them out in an expedient manner, and has led to success, because that's, I think, one of the big keys. I mean, you talk about keys to having a successful plus defense that takes hits away. Okay, you have a tremendous defensive shortstop, and you've got maybe one of the best center fielders defensively in baseball. Well, that fits the Rays' formula perfect of pitching and defense and run prevention. So, elated with what Adames is able to do defensively. We had this discussion with one of our favorite callers and friend of the program, Seth, from Los Angeles a couple days ago, and we had kind of agreed that Adames's days as a Ray are numbered, and I don't want to reiterate this too much, because it's, I love the guy. Willy Adames is another one of my favorites. He's just a terrific upbeat guy, and fan favorite, no doubt. He's always got a smile on his face, but just that with the log jam of the infield in this minor league system, it's not just Franco who can play shortstop, but also Taylor Walls, and maybe even a guy like Vidal Brujan may be vying for that spot. So if Adames, and I would say at 25 years old, I mean, he is who he is. I don't really expect him to develop anymore as a player. So he's going to be a 250 hitter that hits 15 to 20 home runs a year. And so the Rays look at that and just say, well, let's just replace Franco at shortstop, rather than trying to do the Jeter A-Rod thing of having a true shortstop in Franco play third base in order to keep Adames at short. That was always I think that was wishful thinking on my part, as that was something that I continued to put out there. But it looks like that's not the case. I mean, Franco, at least in spring training, was playing shortstop much more often than he was playing third base. And so that just leads me to believe that Franco is going to be a shortstop. And the fact that he could come up probably September this year, and he'll probably start with the big league team maybe in 2022. Just that Adames is, you don't have a backup shortstop. That's just going to be Joey Wendell or whatever kind of super U that you've got on your 26 or 25 man, hopefully by that time. So I guess maybe the only thing Adames that's in his power is if more games like tonight behind the plate would be a great deal in his favor. So I would like to see that continue because I love the guy and I want to see him continue to play in a Rays uniform. So definitely hoping that continues and a good night on both sides of the ball for Willy Adames. And I'm praying that he can keep it up because that was terrific watching him play tonight. Batting in ninth, Kevin Kiermaier, in his 2 games since being activated off the injured list, he has been on fire. Tonight he was 2 for 4 with 2 runs batted in, no walks, no strikeouts. His average on-base percentage and slugging percentage are all the same. They are all 222. Very limited at-bats. He's probably had like 25 at-bats at this point, somewhere between that. But I think they've all been singles, I want to say. But did come through in clutch situations really 3 times. He was 2 for 3 with runners in scoring position, which you know me, that's one of my favorite stats. And so that he was successful in that regard was great. But I would even argue he was 3 for 3 because he was able to reach base via an error. So at least he's putting the ball in play and not striking out with men in scoring position. So he did fly out to center in the 3rd inning. A 1-2-3. And by the way, all the plays were fly outs to center field. Adames, Kiermaier, and Diaz. So the center fielder Michael A. Taylor was awfully busy there in that 3rd inning. We've seen that a couple times. I think in the Yankee series, there was a 1-2-3 inning, and they were all ground outs to Gio Urshela. So not that that's relevant for anything, but that's always kind of an interesting oddity in a sport like baseball that has so much randomness to it, I suppose. But then after that, in the 5th inning, came up in a pretty big spot. At this point, Wendell scored to make it 1-0 on the error, and so Kiermaier came up with Adames at second and 2 outs. And what does he do on a 1-2 count but crush a fastball middle away for an RBI single and drives in Adames from second to make it 2-0 Rays. And then came up in another big situation in the 7th inning, and that time reached base via an E4, which was to Whit Merrifield. That situation was it was runners at second and third and nobody out, and again another 1-2 count, and this time gets a slider kind of middle into him, and he puts kind of a line drive or a ground ball kind of somewhere between there, and gets it right between the second baseman and shortstop, and that was the play, I believe, where Merrifield had the glove on it, but it jumped out of the glove and rolled slowly into center field, so the base runners were able to get around. It was, let's see here. It was Wendell going from second to home, and Adames was able to go from first to third on the play, and Kiermaier got to first. So from that point, it could have been a double play very easily, because there was a runner at first and less than 2 outs if Merrifield had just made the play, but that's better than a strikeout. So I count, in my book, he's 3 for 3 with runners in scoring position. I guess I'll just put it that way. And then in the 9th inning, came through once again. No, Kiermaier was not done. He came up in the 9th with a runner at first. That can't be right. A runner at first, and it was nobody out. And so he hit an RBI single. Okay, so I think ESPN got it wrong. Willy Adames, or maybe I think it was on the same play. So I guess Adames was running on the pitch, it's got to be one of these. Adames, who singled before Kiermaier, stole second and got to third base on the throwing error from the catcher Perez that was trying to throw him out at second, so he got to third there. And I believe, now I got it right. So ESPN was wrong, I was right. Kiermaier, with a man at third and 1 out, singles Adames in. So that's the second time he drove in Adames in scoring position. So I think that's terrific because your 2 best defensive players and have them at that 8 and 9 spot. Obviously, when Zunino's in the lineup, he'll be at one of those spots, but when you have Mejia, who's going to hit a little bit higher in the order, you can do that. And for them to be driving each other in on the bases, I think that's terrific, and they were both outstanding defensively. Kiermaier, with a good throw, could have thrown out Jorge Soler for the final out of the game, which would have been exhilarating and would have preserved the shutout, but was great in center, made some nice catches, and of course has got that rocket of an arm. Almost threw someone out at first. It was, I think, Carlos Santana kind of getting lost out there, and almost doubled him off there at first base. So it's always exciting watching the outlaw in center field. So Kiermaier has been electric since coming off the injured list. I was doubting him. I was a Kiermaier doubter, not a hater, but was not impressed with his start to the season. But for him to come back as strong as he did, maybe the time off did him some good, and he could potentially regroup after an offseason in which he was trying to potentially, I guess, revolutionize his game, which seems he always tries to do every year. But maybe now has finally done it. I don't know. So a good night overall for the Rays lineup. Mainly the runs were coming from mistakes by the Royals, but the only thing you can do is take advantage of those mistakes, and the Rays did. They didn't get in their own way, and I think that's the most important thing, because when you pitch as well as they did tonight and you play as good as good a defense as you did tonight, you're going to hold your opponent to maybe no or just one run, as it turned out tonight. And so you don't need a whole lot of offense. And so if you can just get a couple men on base and take advantage, even if you only get for the Rays, it was 7 hits on the night. But when they come with men at second or on third, I like to see that. And so would love to see maybe that continue in that direction. Certainly, now talking about the pitching side, as we're now over the 1 hour mark, so maybe try and put a wrap on this. But again, number to call if you'd like to chat Rays, you can do so, 877-566-1020. If you want to talk about this Fleming move. So Josh Fleming gets the win tonight, his first of the season. It was a bit of a homecoming for him, not quite on the other side of the state, because they're in Kansas City tonight. On the other side of St. Louis. He's from the St. Louis area, apparently on the Illinois side, but regardless, that's with where the MLB teams are in this country, there's only so many places that would have been a quote unquote homecoming for him. So in the same state, I suppose, of Missouri. So it was kind of cool for him. The first time his brother saw him pitch in the majors, which was so cool. And they said Tompkin on the pregame said he had like 25 friends and also his family there. So a ton of like Fleming fans out there that were able to come out and see him pitch in Kansas City. And I can't believe I haven't mentioned this, but like towards the end of the game, I think it was like 35 degrees, and it was the feels like temperature was in the high 20s. So the Rays really got a tough break with the schedule that they had to go to Fenway, New York, and Kansas City in the month of April. Thankfully, after this, they have a homestand. They'll go out to LA, I think, and the West Coast. So hopefully, I think the next time they'll be back on the road after that is like late May. So hopefully this is like the last really weird cold weather series. And so that was a concern of mine for the Rays. But they were able to play well tonight. I'm not sure. Well, we'll talk about that later, but I'm hoping the game tomorrow will get played, but we won't know until we get there. But anyway, for Fleming, so it was a big night for him, and he ends up, like I said, getting the win, 5 1/3 of no runs. So shutout ball, only 2 hits allowed, no walks, 3 strikeouts. There was only 3 total base runners allowed because he did hit one. He hit Alberto to start the second. And only really 1 threat allowed. It came with a 1-out double from Santana in the first, and he got to third on a ground ball. So they had a runner at third and 2 outs in the first. So you thought maybe that was going to be a bit troublesome, but it really wasn't. And after that, again, had a couple of leadoff hitters get on base, one by a hit by pitch and one by another base hit. It was a single by Santana in the fourth. But outside of that, was pitching quite well. He faced the minimum in the second, third, and fifth because he did get the double play ball in the second inning. So was absolutely dealing. And he got through the lineup exactly 2 times through. So, after he faced the 9-hitter Lopez the second time, which made it 1 out in the sixth, Cash came out and gave him the hook and brought in Thompson. The situation there at that point, it was a 2-0 ball game, and so they were pretty adamant about him not seeing the order 3 times through, which, I guess, looking back now that we've had, some time to step back and kind of analyze it, a 2-0 game with one of, a really good lineup, I would say, and a lot of baseball left to be played. I understand Cash wanting to lock down the win. I think the concern was, and if this had maybe backfired, this was what I was going to lead the show off with, which is to say that the next 2 days, the Rays have their number 4 and 5 starters respectively, which is Rich Hill and Michael Wacha. And the importance of that is that those guys, you shouldn't be expecting more than 4 or 5 innings from them. I know Wacha pitched a gem, 6 innings, I think, shutout in the Bronx, and Rich Hill had a 6-inning, 4-run start against the Yanks, and those were their 2 best starts respectively. But again, 4 or 5 innings, so you're going to need your bullpen the next 2 days. And obviously we're in that midst of a 30 games to 31-day stretch. So, and you've already had so many guys in the bullpen go down, so there's so many factors at play here. And so initially when you saw Kevin Cash walk out, and I know looking at the Rays Discord that everyone pretty much agreed with me, it was like, what the heck are you doing, Cash? Like, leave the guy in. He's dealing right now. He's been terrific to start the year. You look back to his last start, he threw 85 pitches against Texas and got through, I think it was 5+. So he gave up a couple base runners when he started the 6th. So maybe that's the missing link. Maybe that's the epiphany I've just had. So you look back to a start against Texas, and so for the final out of the 5th inning, he faced the leadoff man, Kiner Falefa, for the 3rd time. So that was, he basically just faced the lineup 2 times through and got the leadoff hitter 3 times. And so after that, Cash decides to bring him in for the 6th and immediately gives up a single and a walk. So a very small sample size, only one other start we're talking about, but it has not been positive when it's seeing the 3rd time through. So all that does is just reinforce, the analytics and things that the Rays already have in mind. So I guess they gave him the test the first time and he didn't pass it. So the next time that was going to happen, they were just going to give him the hook. And at that point, the Rays were in a 1-0 deficit in that Texas game. So kind of another close situation. So looking back now, again, as I said, it always tends to be that way when you're able to analyze it a little bit later. It makes sense. But it was still kind of, it was a head-scratcher mainly as far as to say where are the innings going to come from, because Castillo was on a back-to-back. He had pitched 20 innings 2 days ago and like a 10-pitch save yesterday, and so he was probably not available, period, tonight. You had Kittredge, who got the day off yesterday but did start the day before, an inning and 2/3. And you've got to be careful with him. Not only does he look as good, I think, as he ever has as a Ray, but the last time they kind of tried to play that game where... and by the way, no, he didn't get the day off yesterday. He started yesterday, an inning and 2/3. And so last year in 2020, when they had him close the game and then open the next day, he ended up with the elbow injury. So it's like, why would you want to do that again? That's the literal definition of insanity, is doing the same thing again, expecting a different result. So they did have Kittredge warming at multiple points, but not a guy that they would want to bring in. And also Jeffrey Springs was coming off a back-to-back. So you have to be careful because you're already out Nick Anderson, Chaz Rowe, Pete Fairbanks. So, 3 of your top bullpen arms are already out. How many more do you want to lose by playing this way? And so, in that regard, I think you should try and get those extra outs out of your starter. But I understand it was a close game, and he wants to lock down the win, and he trusts his bullpen, etc., etc. And he turns to one of his more trusted guys, Ryan Thompson, who gets some big outs, goes an inning and 2/3 scoreless, and does it rather efficiently, throwing just 15 pitches, getting the 5 outs. So that's very good for him. And then after that, so that got them through 7. So after that, obviously, you only needed 6 more outs. And I had expected Hunter Strickland, who was on a couple of days rest, he got an inning of work, did allow a couple of hits with 2 outs. That was a concerning situation because it was runners at the corners and 2 outs for Whit Merrifield, who was like hitting over 300 and has 11 RBIs. So that was a big situation, and it was only 3-0 at that point. And so that was kind of scary, but Strickland has ended up getting through it, striking out Merrifield, which you're not going to get that very much, and he went 0 for 4 tonight, did Merrifield. So it gets you through that. And then by the time the bottom of the ninth rolled around, it was 4-0, not a safe situation, so no need for even Kittredge. I don't think Castillo was ever in play tonight. And you go with Chris Mazza, who was brought up from the alternate training site a couple days ago, and he pitches an inning of a run. He gives up a liner. Thankfully, I mean, Brandon Lau legitimately robbed a single from Carlos Santana for the first out of that inning. Kind of shades of Adames' play, I think, yesterday in Yankee Stadium for the final out of that ball game. But then right after that, gives up a double to Salvador Perez. That was almost a home run. I mean, Kauffman Stadium is one of the deepest parks in Major League Baseball, pretty much throughout the outfield. I mean, it took Trevor Bauer a pretty good throw to get that throw out of the stadium. And so Perez could have been a home run. If it wasn't freaking 25 degrees out, it probably would have been. But gets a double there. Gets to third on a wild pitch, which is Maz's fault, and then gives a sac fly to Jorge Soler, who had like a 50 home run season a couple years ago, so a big threat. And Kiermaier almost threw him out, but didn't. So that was out number 2 and did get the run through, which spoiled the shutout, which obviously Kevin Cash should not be like paying attention to that. That's not something you manage to. You're just there to get the win, so that's why Mazza is out there in a 4-0 game. But just analyzing it from a point of, the situation, he did give up a run and how it occurred. And then got the pop out. A nice play over there by Brasso at first, by the way, but, kind of a lazy pop up and for the third and final out of the game. And the Royals were able to break the shutout to their credit. Fleming, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredibly efficient for him. 5 1/3, just 65 pitches. I mean, just looking at pitch count, and he had 85 last time out. I mean, he could have finished the 6th and probably gotten through his 7th inning, assuming that he had success the 3rd time through, which is a big question mark, and we didn't get to find out tonight. But 65 pitches, 46 for strikes. He was attacking, pounding the strike zone, whatever adjective, right? Or no, that would be a verb. I'm sorry, this is not English class, but attacking the strike zone, was getting ahead of guys 0-2 and counts routinely, and getting a lot of those ground balls. I mean, out of his 16 outs, only 3 were via the strikeout. So he had 9 ground ball outs and 3 fly ball outs. And the ground balls is what he was known for. Had like 4 comebackers against Texas his first start, and I think tonight, if I can do a quick count, I think he only had 1, but was getting a lot of weak contact. And like, we want to see more of Yarbrough. Just trust the defense behind you, because more often than not, they're going to come through for you as long as you can keep the ball in the park. And he was 12 for 18 of establishing the first pitch strike, which is a big deal for him. If you can get ahead of guys and get that weak contact, that's the formula. And the rest of the guys were tremendous at throwing strikes. The staff as a whole tonight, 118 pitches, 81 for strikes. So they were pounding the strike zone again, which is tremendous. Thompson, 15 for 9. Strickland, 20 for 16. And Mazza, 18 for 10 as far as pitches to strike ratio. And they were all about 50% after Fleming as far as establishing the first pitch strike. So all is good in that regard. So a 4-0 win tonight for the Rays, which is a terrific thing. And their winning streak right now is to 4, and they are now above 500 for the first time since opening weekend at 9-8. And they are now just 2 games back of the Boston Red Sox for first place in the American League East. So we said going into the year that April was their chance to maybe take a division lead, and with how poor the Yankees have been, and I don't think anyone would say that the Red Sox are going to continue the pace that they've set for themselves, that maybe after all, even with all the losing there early, that the Rays may come out of this month, hopefully knocking on wood that I don't jinx myself, not that April is extremely consequential, but that they could finish April after all with a division lead, and we certainly hope that will be the case. But now we turn the page to tomorrow, 8:10 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be in Kansas City, Kauffman Stadium. Rich Hill against Brad Keller. I'll see if we have anything new from Topkin. No, we do not. So, Rich Hill on the year, going for the Rays. He is 1-0 with a 7.53 earned run average. His last time out against Texas, 4 1/3, 4 runs on 7 hits, 2 home runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, 88 pitches. His best start of the year, 6 innings, 4 runs and 4 hits against the Yankees. Has given up at least 1 home run in all of his starts, so even with the deep park and Kauffman Stadium, logic would lead you to believe that that trend would probably continue, although we certainly hope that that is not the case. So I don't know. It's going to be tough. This lineup is very heavy right-handed, and by the way, I hope I get it right. This was, I think, the 5th straight game that the Royals had faced a left-handed starter, which, that's an extreme oddity, and they're going to be seeing another left-hander tomorrow, so make it, 6 straight, I think it will be. So maybe they are right-handed heavy, and so, they're accustomed to, I guess, at this point, to seeing that. And the 41-year-old left-hander, who knows how much gas he's got left in the tank, at least watching him last time out against Texas. I mean, he's given up 4 runs earned in all of his starts. So I guess it's not a matter of is he going to pitch well, but it's just how long is he going to stay out there. As I know his seat in the dugout is already getting pretty toasty, as fans are calling for the likes of McClanahan and Patino and Honeywell. And that might not be too far off, by the way, but you got to work with what you got right now, and some of those guys are still getting, built up, and, some of them might not be ready for the major leagues. Who knows? I mean, they've all made their major league debut at this point, the 3 that I mentioned, but doesn't mean they couldn't still use a little bit development at the AAA level. But not to go too far off into that, I guess what that is telling you is that I'm just trying to do anything to avoid talking about Rich Hill, because I don't know exactly how to explain it. I mean, I can't. No logic would lead you to believe that he's going to have a fantastic start tomorrow. I mean, it could be kind of like Fleming, where they're just like, hey, man, just get through the order 2 times through. Whether that's 4 or 5 innings, so be it. And probably some earned runs in the process. So my guess for him, because that's what we always do, just looking at the pattern, hopefully, 5 innings, and I'll go wishful thinking. Maybe he gives up 3 runs or something like that. And so outside of that, you've got the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. So as I do the quick mental math, that's 12 outs that you've got to go get, which is 1 more than they needed tonight. So if they're winning, Castillo and Springs would be in play. And either of them, Springs could go 2, but I would imagine you'd try and get just 1 out of them. So, maybe they could, with 4 innings left, if Hill gives them 5, they could go 1 inning each of Cody Reed, Andrew Kittredge, Jeffrey Springs, and Diego Castillo, assuming it's a winning effort. If it's not, let's say the game gets away from them and it's a bad start for Hill, if he gives up 7 runs or something absurd, then it's just going to be Trevor Richards' mop-up duty, which we certainly hope will not be the case. I mean, Mazza could potentially give them 2 or something tomorrow. He could even pitch 1 in the middle innings if needed be. But if they're trying to lock down a win, it would be Cody Reed, who has not pitched in a while. And as they've continued to say, he can pitch multiple innings, but then Kittredge for 1, Springs for 1, and Castillo maybe for 1 to lock down, hopefully, the 9th inning to secure a series victory. So hopefully speak that out into existence. And who they will face tomorrow night, Brad Keller, the 25-year-old right-hander, is 1-1 on the year with a 9.58 earned run average. Has progressively gotten better in every start. His last time out against the Los Angeles Angels, he goes 5 2/3, giving up just 1 run on 4 hits, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts, 94 pitches. So part of it was him getting built up. His first time out against Texas, he got blown up. He only got through an inning and a third, giving up 6 runs. Then the second time against the White Sox, 3 1/3 of 4 runs. And as I said, against Anaheim or Los Angeles, 5 2/3 of a run on 4 hits. So my guess, maybe 5 innings of 2 runs is probably what I would put out there. That's an easy guess to make for any starter. My my money is that they'll go heavy lefty. So in the outfield from left to right, Meadows will be in left, Kiermaier in center, and probably Rosarena in right. Unless they want to go Phillips and like go crazy left-hander, but I would even rather have a Rosarena, especially right now. I mean, Phillips is batting 100 for goodness sakes. And then in the infield from third to first, you would go Wendell at third, Adames at shortstop, Lau at second. Maybe you go Diaz at first, like Diaz or Brasso at first. And then at catcher, you'd probably go Zunino, and then DH Sugo. Now, if they want to have Sugo play first, and so no Brasso, no Diaz, or I guess you could use the DH on either of those guys, or you would just DH Mejia and have him play, because a switch hitter, he can't get that righty on lefty advantage, although it doesn't seem they love him as much from the left side of the plate. So that would be my long-winded lineup prediction for them tomorrow. Let's see if Brad Keller faced the Rays in 2019, because thankfully we are now back in that time where we're playing teams out of the division, and it has been so long. So he did get a couple of starts, back-to-back starts, in fact, against the Rays in 2019. On April 22nd, which is like, wow, that's almost to the day, 6 1/3, 5 runs and 7 hits, and his next time out, April the 29th, 5 innings, 5 runs on 6 hits. So let's just take a look. And then we'll get out of here just to see, because this team has changed a whole heck of a lot. Lau 1 for 4, Yandy 1 for 3, Wendell 0 for 4, Kiermaier 1 for 4, Zunino 1 for 2, Adames 1 for 3. And then in the other start, Lau 1 for 4, Yandy 2 for 4, Kiermaier 1 for 3. And that was it. And that was a Ryan Stanek Open. Oh my goodness! I wish we were still living in those days where Ryan Stanek was opening ball games, and he gave way for 5 2/3 of Yonny Chirinos just to put you back in the time capsule. And hopefully he can rehab from Tommy John and be back maybe in 2022. Not sure if there'll be a space for him in the rotation, honestly, at that point, but hopefully, because he has been quite effective as a Ray, I would say, more times than not, barred from the injuries, of course. So that is where we will leave the program off. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the program tonight. Thank you for Dirty D on, I guess, the Rays Discord, helping me get the link out to the show on the Rays Reddit. Seems like we could have, that we have pulled in potentially some listeners. Seemed like the show got some upvotes. So we got anyone still listening, I want to thank you for tuning into the program. If you don't want to wait for the link, definitely just go on Spreaker.com where you're listening to this and subscribe to the show. Also follow WHBC Official on Twitter. The link goes straight out on there when we're live, so make sure to do that as well. We will be on the air tomorrow after the game, about same time, 11:15, 11:30. We'll see you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.